Okay, we're live now. Welcome, everyone. I'm Cheryl Pop. Thank you for joining us at Sausalito Books by the Bay on a rather historic day. It's gorgeous here in Sausalito, and I hope it's pretty wherever you are joining us from. We appreciate you making an effort on a Saturday morning to join us for the very exciting launch of a new book by Jennifer Gennari, who's a local Sausalito author. It's her second book, and we're very excited to have her with us today, as well as Alison Green Meyers, who's joining us from the East Coast. She's also an author. You're going to learn more about her. The format will be, we are going to hear first from Jennifer. She's going to read from her book, which is, I don't want to tell you too much about it, but it's a great middle grade book about a girl named Amelia who does not like sound. She's very sensitive to sound. She has to wear earmuffs all the time. And you can imagine this creates some problems for her in school. She's in the 5th grade, right? I think, as I recall. Anyway, it's a wonderful middle grade book. We'll talk more about it. Allison's going to be in conversation with Jennifer after she does her part. And then, as you know, there is an opportunity at the end of this for you to ask questions. If you go, I'll do a little Zoom protocol before we get going. If you go to the bottom of your screen, there's an area for you to submit questions. So we'll be answering those at the end. And then I want you to all stay on this call, despite all the exciting news happening elsewhere, to the very end, because we have a musical performance by Sarah, the author's daughter. So it's going to be a surprise. Anyway, let's get going. Thanks again for joining us this morning. And I am delighted to welcome Jennifer, who I think most of you probably know her. I think we have a lot of other authors, but she's also the author of My Mixed Up Berry Summer, which was another great middle grade book. And she's very active in the writing community, does a lot of community service, but she's going to tell you more about that. So thanks for joining us. Welcome, Jennifer, and look forward to hearing everything you have to say.
Cheryl, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with everyone, and I also really appreciate you making time to join us today. And even if you are watching this taped later, I understand. It's been exciting. I'm also excited to talk about Muffled. Here it is. And it is the story about Amelia, who is a reader and a reluctant trombonist. So in 5th grade, everyone has to choose an instrument, either a choir or an instrument to play. And to Amelia, that feels like she has to make noise on purpose. So she forms some unlikely friendships, which helps her to cope with her noise sensitivity and step out of her comfort zone. So I'm going to read really just a short snippet to get you a taste of what this book is like. So here we go. This is the first page or two of Muffled. On the other side of the lobby door, 96 sidewalk lines away, is the first day of 5th grade. I stare through the glass, tugging at my backpack straps, although they are fine. I know I am stalling. As soon as I open the door, the outside will rush into my ears. Taxi horns, loud radios, barking dogs. I hold on to the quiet as long as I can. Do you want us to walk with you? Dad asks, right as Mom says, "Ready, Amelia?" I shake my head. I savor one more moment of quiet, only to be interrupted by the elevator dinging. Deb brushes by us. "See you there," she says as she pushes open the lobby door. Warm air and city commotion burst into our apartment building. I cover my ears and count the ways I am different this year. I am 10 now and can walk to school by myself. Mom and Dad gave me a Charlie card and permission to ride the T alone to the Boston Public Library. My noise-canceling headphones are not on my head. Once the door closes, I lower my hands. Outside, I see Deb catch up to Jax, who lives across the street. They head off together without me. I tell myself that's fine. I am only a neighborhood pal to Jax, and ever since 3rd grade, backup friend to Deb minus Kiki. I take a step toward the door and then hesitate. I feel lightheaded, missing the weight of my headphones. Only my hair covers my ears. Mom hugs me goodbye. Fifth grade will be great. Dad touches my arm. One more thing, he says, and hands me a box. What's this? Mom asks, as surprised as I am. I open it. Inside are purple earmuffs with a white band. I slip them on. The muffs, soft and furry, cover my ears completely. I love them instantly. Earmuffs are like having permission to place your hands over your ears all the time. Thank you. I'm going to invite Alison to turn on her mic. And I want to tell you a little bit about Alison. I met Alison at the Highlights Foundation, where she is the program director. And the Highlights Foundation is a magical place in Pennsylvania, which is now a state dear to our hearts, which supports children's book writers and illustrators. She has served as a classroom teacher, literacy coach, curriculum writer, and school director. She's also a National Writing Fellow and an active member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. If there are aspiring writers on the call, I do encourage you to join that organization, which I also am a Marin County meeting organizer for that. And Alison's forthcoming middle grade novel, A Bird Will Soar, releases fall 2021 from Dutton. So I want to let's start our conversation. Tell us about your book.
Well, hi, Jen. I'm happy to be here with you today. It's a day for celebration. Yeah, I'm excited. A Bird Will Soar follows another 10-year-old whose name is Axel, kind of through his world with lots of glorious bird facts woven throughout. But I want to talk today about Amelia and her world. So if you'll allow me, I'd love to switch to some questions to you.
Of course.
So let's really start on Amelia's story and her world. I think I had an opportunity to talk to you when you were just kind of starting to shift the format, the structure of Muffled. And I wonder if you can kind of walk us through, this idea as the idea started to take shape. And then, what are the iterations of the story between then and what we get to hold in our hand right now?
Yeah, it's an amazing little story because it was a seed from a really long time ago, and it started with a blizzard in Boston in my childhood that basically had so much snow dumped on the city that it stopped traffic. And I remembered as a child being struck by how amazing it was that there were no cars on our street. We're going to take a quick peek. I actually have a couple of slides that I want to show you, and hang on just a minute. I am going to do that again so that I have the option of showing you those slides. There we go. And I had a story file that this is what it was like. This is actually, I think, my photograph of Parker Street in Boston, where the snowdrifts were piled so high and it was so quiet. This is also a picture that I found in the Boston Globe. And I also remember doing this cross-country skiing to the store to get milk and stuff. Let me just go back and tell you that I had a story note. Like many writers, I keep a file of story ideas, and it said, what would happen if all the noises stopped? And so I didn't really know what to do with that story for a really long time. But then when I met my husband, I realized that for him, he was sensitive to sound and that he needs that extra space and quiet to recharge. And so I wondered, what would it be like for a child if that silence was not just pleasurable, but a necessity? And so I began to write it in verse. I do have some published poetry. And I started to write it in verse because I thought that's the way Amelia would hear the world, right? In short bursts, short line breaks. And that made sense to me. And I'm also a huge fan of, reading. I'm a huge fan of novels in verse. And right behind me, you can see some of these great titles. I'm just going to rattle them off because I do recommend reading, like Jacqueline Woodson and Jason Reynolds, Karen Hess, and Jasmine Warga. She's a really beautiful book, novel in verse, and Anne Berg, some other favorites. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to try this. I'm going to write a novel in verse. But I'll tell you a secret, because I worked in journalism, and I write short. And I thought, oh, this is a shortcut. This will be easier. It was not easier. So it took a long time to get the book in a certain shape. And my agent thought it was good enough. And we sent it out. And we kept getting a lot of rejections. And then finally, Catherine Ladone from Simon & Schuster thought it was wonderful. And she said, will you revise it in prose? And I thought, oh, can I do that? And I did. And I, just to quickly say, I took out all the line breaks first. And the first thing I saw was that there were some gaps in the plot. And it was an exciting moment. And I knew I could make the book better.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of keep following that lead a little bit, because I think just thematically, when you read the book, when you really start to investigate Amelia, you see how poetry, like the lyrics of song or music or the blank space on the page, how that could really serve Amelia's story. But you decided to switch. And I wonder, what were other discoveries that were made because you decided to go to prose? Like, that seems like a very narrow view of Amelia's world.
Right.
And you still kept it in first person, so it's still Amelia's world. But what did that shift to prose do?
Yeah, I think two things. One is that the setting is Boston, and I really was able to flesh that out more. And then I will also talk about characters. It really was the characters, the secondary characters, that I deepened. But the urban setting was super important to me. I volunteer with 826 Valencia, which is an organization some of you may know. It's actually national, but writing tutor centers. And it introduces me to students. I mean, I'm helping them, but they show me their world. And they don't have a house with a backyard and a minivan. So I was really committed to showing a story. And through prose, I was able to present more details about a family that relies on public transit, and the one in which the richness of a city's free public institutions are theirs. The Boston Common plays a role, and the public library plays a role. These are free institutions. This is the foundation of our country. I might get a little teary here, but I want to say that that's what's important for Amelia's family, is that they can get places, and there are places where they visit. And of course, Amelia goes to the library. The secondary characters really bloomed in the prose version. There was a character who was not even in the verse novel version, and that is Mr. Scarrett. He is the school counselor. And when I first wrote this story, I wanted this feeling of like, some teachers really cared about Amelia, but they were overwhelmed because of class size. They couldn't give her the attention she needed. Other teachers were just like, hurry up and get over it. And so we talked about it, Catherine, at my editors, and we decided to add Mr. Scarrett, the school counselor. And I had so much fun writing him, because he wheezes through his nose when he talks, which drives her crazy. And then, of course, he becomes a true friend to her.
That's great. I definitely could see that. And I think that's one thing. I love novels in verse as well so much, but that setting piece, I think that's something that you can really bring forward, in the prose. And so I can definitely see where you went with that. But to stay on that track with some secondary characters, I had fun kind of going back through the book. I read it for the first time just to enjoy your words and your world that you created. And then I went back through and I was just looking at some of the nuanced things that you did in the story. And I want to talk a little bit about those characters. I thought it might be fun. I know as an author, you kind of put the book out into the world, and then you probably have moved on to writing some other things, correct?
Yeah.
So I want to dive back in. I'm going to see if we could play a quick round of who said what. And to play this, I'm going to read a little bit of dialogue and just see, can you tell me the secondary characters that I think you developed so well? then we can have a little conversation about them. But let's see how many you get right. I'm only going to do 3. And anybody in the chat is welcome to also put their guess in the chat. If you think you know who said what, you can certainly put that in the chat. But the first one that I have, I love this quote. It's okay to make mistakes sometimes. Everyone does.
Do you want me to say, or do you want to let people?
Let's give it 2 seconds here. It's okay to make mistakes sometimes. Everyone does. All right, Jen, who was it?
It's her dad.
It is her dad. Just a little bit about the development of this one. You have an only child, and you have, 2 parents who are also navigating parenting.
Yes.
In the middle of, this story. Can you tell me just a little bit about Dad's development?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to me because the dad is empathetic. Like, he also is somebody who needs quiet. And it was easier for me to write the mom character. I'm a little bit more, like, hey, it's going to be, you can do this. And one of the fun scenes was the dad, there's a moment where they're sitting on the sofa together, and he's like doing some deep breathing, basically, like kind of calm himself down again. Anyways, I enjoyed having him also get to a place where he sides with mom a little bit, and also then coming back to her. I also want to say to make him a little bit more well-rounded too, I enjoyed adding this idea that he counts birds, that he's a birder, here we go, the bird theme. And that was important because it ended up being like, he always was looking up. He's listening for song. He's optimistic. He looks on the bright side of things. And so that was a fun device to give him the opportunity to be like somebody who's like listening for bird song. That also ended up feeling really important to me because in this pandemic, we've heard more bird song. It's again, this idea that when things are quieter, we can hear the birds. So,
yeah, I love that. All of those choices. I mean, I really felt in particular, a love toward Dad. I, was grateful that, he was in Amelia's corner, and also was dynamic in that, there were actions and reactions that he had throughout the story. So I have another one here. We'll see if anybody wants to take a guess at who said what. I don't know why you can't let people be nice to you, Amelia. Give them 1 or 2 seconds. I don't know why you can't let people be nice to you, Amelia. Who said it, Jen?
It's Madge.
It's Madge. Ooh, I saw Cheryl that too. I can't wait to hear about the development of Madge. But I also think too, like that quote in and of itself really shows character growth on both Madge's side and on Amelia's side. And so talk to us a little bit about developing Madge, how she came to be, and kind of that arc, that change.
That was the most telling change for me in terms of like from verse to prose, because I had made Madge almost not cardboardy, but she was like loud, and she was the one who was like bold and not afraid to ask questions. She had no fear of looking foolish. It's something that I think kids, look up to that. They're like, oh, that's a cool person. But what I realized is that I ended up surprising myself. And I have to tell you, actually, Alison, I teach a line editing class at Highlights, and I actually use this revision for students in that there was a moment where Amelia, says something to Madge, and Madge, I didn't give Madge a chance to answer. And it was my editor who said, oh, you had to give her a chance to answer. And so then I thought about what she would say. And it's not this exact moment, the one you're referring to. It was a different one when they come back from their disastrous day at the library, where Madge is not quiet in the library. But giving her that chance to answer is that character growth that happened in the revision process, because I was like, oh, wow, she's learning to be when she gets her feelings hurt, she ends up learning to tell Amelia about it, like that, hey, you hurt my feelings. So yeah, it was a really interesting chance to have that friendship grow.
Mm-hmm. And I love too, I mean, just while we're on that specific quote and kind of talking about this relationship, I loved everything you did with the tube. Like I just thought, that was so well done. And it provided a space, but it also provided, in a very quiet way, it provided some tension in the story too. You're in close quarters there with others, and especially when that is your safe space. So was that from the beginning? Was that from the start? You had the
And
tube?
I have to tell everybody, I mean, I might as well reveal my age, but in the 1970s or thereabouts, and they did a lot of recycled playgrounds in the Boston area. And there was a giant tractor size tire, not an inner tube, but a tire that they buried in the ground. And you could crawl inside that tire. And then, of course, I had to modernize it. And that was my inspiration. It was this idea of like, oh, she could go hide in a tire. But I realized they don't make playgrounds like that anymore. Everything's plastic. So all the tubes, and I realized they do still make these tubes on playgrounds where kids can go and hide in plastic. So yes, that was there from the very beginning. I imagined Amelia, because I don't know how many of you, have playground or recess memories, and sometimes those are very lonely times for kids. And it was easy for me to imagine Amelia like not knowing who to play with at recess.
Yeah, I thought that was really well done. So one last quote here from the book, just because I really want to talk about this character too. Oh, did I cut out? Did you hear that one?
Go ahead and say it again.
What were you writing in class?
This was hard. The answer is Jax. And I'm really glad that you asked me about Jax, because he really was at first just a name in the classroom. And I'm a neighbor across the street. But then gradually it was like somebody needed to be in Madge's court. And so Jax, their friendship grew. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. In the end, sometimes kids are like, well, you can only have one best friend. You can't have two. And so I was like, but no, they can't. They can. So Max and having Madge and Jax and Amelia come together at the end turned out to be something that surprised me. That was definitely in revision. And at first, he was just this kid across the street who liked to play ball and, sang in the choir really beautifully. But there's one other thing too, which is that around this age, kids are like, well, you can only have girl friends. Girls can only be friends with girls, and boys can only be friends with boys. And the fact that Madge and Jax did that, it became important to me that there was a bridge, and that Amelia too learned, you can be friends with somebody who's not like you.
Yeah. I thought Jax was just he grew more and more likable in every page turn. And I was just so happy to have that friendship, I think, by the end. But to play a little bit more on that quote, Jax, of course, is asking that because he sees Matt and Amelia passing some things back and forth in class, right? That to me, I loved every time that you brought the writing backwards in. And I just wondered more about that. Like, where did that come from? And why was that important to these characters?
That is a funny story too, because my parents moved from one house to another, and I found in the attic some journals that I had written, a little older actually, like 12 and 13 and 14. But on the cover was my name backwards. And I had done a lot of backwards writing, and I had forgotten about that completely. And I think kids like that. It's a secret language. And I did have a lot of discussions with my editor who said, this is too hard to read. And I stood firm and I said, I think there are kids who are just going to want to figure it out. It's a secret language. And maybe it's hard to read, but there are going to be readers who like sit there and puzzle it and read it backwards until they get it. So for me, it was an element that I brought in from the very beginning and had to stick to my guns and say, no, I really want this in there. I don't want to translate it, on the page.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say about it. Yeah, I think that's it. Just that it's a secret language.
It was so much fun. And I think to the payoff when you get to the word airheads too, because that one was particularly hard to figure out. And so the being in on like a double layer of jokes, and it wasn't too harsh. I think that was something else about that I thought you did really, really well in the book. It wasn't mean. I mean, it was hard. It was honest in that this is a struggle, or these are pieces of self that, you're trying to make your own voice stronger. I got those themes, but I felt like you also made a real decision not to go too dark, too deep, too mean.
Yeah.
Is that true? Or
I think that's true. Although I'm often told that my voice as a writer is sweet. And sometimes I feel like, oh, I want to be something more than just sweet, but now I'm going to embrace it a little bit more, because maybe the world and children's books, maybe sweetness is just fine. For kids. It is really important to me, this theme, this idea of recognizing that everybody has different ways of being and that you can accept that. Yeah, I just think that the level of information and noise that children hear, it might just be really nice to have a book that's saying, yep, sometimes kids are a little bit mean in 5th grade, but there are people here who care about you, and you can care for each other, and you can support each other and grow.
Yeah.
Make those friends.
I really love that. I think we could, talk an awful lot about even more of the characters that you brought in, and kind of both of those sides. Of course, you have people who maybe you would say you were rooting for in the story, and that you were people that you were really hoping would change significantly in the story. But before we switch to any questions from visitors who have come to the book launch to celebrate with you, is there anything else in the story that you wanted to share with us about Amelia, or about any of those secondary characters? Anything that surprised you in the process?
No, I like many people, I enjoyed. Yes, I'll tell you a couple of things. One is that I just thought of this, that I did pay homage to an elementary school teacher. Actually, her name was Ms. Fabian, and she was my writing teacher in 6th grade, and I made him that Mr. Fabian in there. And there's also like a trombone teacher whose name I used. He's the trumpet teacher, Mr. Tingle. And I think I'm going to add that the most interesting thing was the mom character growth. And when you make a book, it takes a lot of people. You have your friends who read it, your family reads it, your agent reads it, your editor reads it. Catherine and I ended up having really fascinating conversations about parents who are loving, who are there. And sometimes I had written the mom character, it was hard to get that balance between her being loving and obtuse. And I think that it's okay for parents to realize, you're just not perfect all the time. Maybe you're not doing something quite right. And the growth that happens in their relationship was a surprise to me, that mom gets it at the end. And well, I'll tell you, the scene in which they watch the video of the famous trombonist together was in different places in the book. I put it in one place in the book, and then I put it in another place. Finally, it ends up at the end of the book, and I realized, because it's the sweetness of them coming together, that they sit and watch, arm in arm, watching this video of a dreamy trombone player, a woman who broke barriers, um, and a trombone.
Yeah, I think that's a really, and I see questions coming in, so we will switch to those, but that's such a great part, I think, of middle grade too, that adults, you can also show kind of that development and those layers in adults, because adults really do make up, this is a 10-year-old's world, and the adults in her world are very important, but they're still learning. It's not just kids that are still learning, adults, we're learning every single day. And so to be really honest about that and put that in a book, that says a lot for the world you created, but also for your readers.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, parents mess up and can grow.
yeah
Yeah. So let's, Cheryl, are you ready to read us some of the
I
questions?
am. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Allison and Jennifer. That was an absolutely delightful exchange between the two of you, and it really does help bring the book to life. I know I have some questions, and I'm going to encourage everyone who's with us now, if you have any questions, now is a good time to put them into the Q&A area, which you see at the bottom of your screen. While we're giving people an opportunity to do that, one of my questions is, was this at all, obviously the writing backwards was a little autobiographical, but was it biographical in any way? Did you know a child, a young girl or a boy who had this sensitivity to sound, or was this just a completely fictional character based on this original concept?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I want to say that it really is not, it's not autobiographical. I mean, in the sense that I take little elements, I think all writers do this. We take little elements of things that we have experienced or we've seen somebody else experience. I like to always emphasize that knowing, uh, watching, observing other people is such a key part of being a writer and understanding people's emotional reactions to things. But yeah, I was the shy kid who read a lot during lunch. Not quite sure how to make friends, um, and that, but that's it. Because eventually I stopped being shy, and I'm, as you know, kind of talkative and outspoken and
Yeah.
gregarious in some ways. And yeah, that is not who I am. But I can remember those, recess
Mhm.
times.
Yeah, people have a hard time believing that I was ever shy, but I was also painfully shy. And one of the things I think that makes it such a valuable read for children that age, girls and boys, is that it really talks about a young child who really is challenged and shy and has some insecurities, very, very bright. And I think that happens. You see that a lot. And, this kind of walks people through how, yeah, this is a challenge and it's difficult, but it can
Yeah.
be resolved.
I should also say that the noise level, our world is much noisier, and that I think is something that, as I've gotten older too, I actually really enjoy silence a lot more
Mhm.
um, than I used to, and I yeah, I just think that that's something for people to be aware of. And there's a little author's note in the back to talk about how classrooms can be really noisy and that kids can't concentrate.
Yeah, the
So
decibel level has gone way up in our world. Okay, let's go through some of these questions. This is from another Jennifer, and it is a question for you, Jen. Great interview. Muffled sounds fantastic. What are you working on next?
I'm glad you asked. The book that I am hoping finds a publisher soon is called The Last House on Marsh Lane, and it is the story of a girl who wants to stop the sea from flooding the only home she has ever known. This issue is important to me. It is about climate change, but it ended up again being about so much more about family and what is home, and what is it that we treasure more than anything else? Is it the house, or is it the people in the house? But I also wanted a humorous way to talk about, what would a child do? What would an 11-year-old do to try to stop the sea from flooding their home? And they go through some crazy, she and a friend go through some crazy ideas to try to stop the sea from flooding the neighborhood.
We will look forward to that.
Thank
Amy asks, in reference to the question I posed about children who have issues with noise, did you do much research to learn about that particular syndrome in children?
Yeah, thank you for asking that one. Yes, I not only spoke with a therapist, somebody who works with children who have these issues. I spoke with some teachers as well, who a lot of kids are wearing noise canceling headphones in the classroom. It's much, much more common. Um, Getting their perspective helped. The main book that I really read a lot of is called The Highly Sensitive Child. I don't know if that's backwards or forwards.
Right.
But it is an interesting book about this idea that it's a trait. It's that people have different varying degrees of need for space, time to think through before they respond. You know, maybe their brain is going through a lot of other stuff. I do want to say this, of course, is just my take on one child who has these traits. There are going to be other people who might read it and think that it doesn't quite capture their own experience in the same way. Every individual experiences sound in their own way. And so that was something that I noted as well for people. Any errors are my own.
One of the other things I really loved about the book, as a bookstore owner, of course, is the focus on the library, that it was her friend. The books were her friends. And even when no one else would be her friend, Amelia had, and you can tell I'm broadcasting live from the store and there are screaming children. It's very appropriate. And they're headed towards Pooh Corner here. Anyway, I think you can still hear me. Anyway, I love that. You know, that's so true. I spent half my life in the library as a young girl, and it's so important to have books as your friends as well. Now Amelia learns to transition to having other friends too, but I like that about it. I want to ask you about the cover of the book, Muffled. It is a spectacular cover. What inspired you? And I mean, covers, as a, you know, somebody who's selling books, covers are so important. And this one is going to be a bestseller just from the cover.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that question. Javier Perez, he is an Ecuadorian illustrator. You can actually follow him at Cinta Scotch. Cinta, C-I-N-T-A, Scotch, like Scotch tape. He is renowned actually for taking photographs of objects, everyday objects, from staples to book covers to matches to hardware. And in this case, Simon & Schuster asked him to find a pair of earmuffs, and he found these earmuffs and then did this beautiful illustration. You may not be aware, but it's actually a musical staff. So these are the lines of music, and this is sort of like a note. Her head is a note. But yes, some people have been asking me, is that plush? Can I pet the earmuff? And
yeah, it looks real.
It looks real, but it's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have one other question, and that is this hearing issue in any way related to autism? Did you find that in your research?
Yeah, that was actually a decision that I made because I feel strongly there's a movement among the children's lit community to provide opportunities for people to speak with their own voices and to tell their stories. I do not have autism. I do not know people with autism. And it was a very distinct decision to not make her neurodiverse in any way. I wanted to tell this story as a child who was just sensitive to sound.
Great. Well, it really is a delightful book. And another plug that I'll put in for it, because I've been very involved. October was National Bully Prevention Month. And I think, as Alison noted, you handle, I mean, kids can be mean. We all were. And there is bullying is a huge issue in the schools today. And I think you address that in a very empathetic way. You know, you don't get too grim with it, but you know, I think you handle it kind of with kid gloves, you know, but you deal with it. You know, it's kind of like, this is a reality, and you show how the kids work through it, which I think is, again, I mean, I would almost add this. I have a reading list for to stop bullying in schools because it's such an issue. And I think I'm going to add this, even though it's not about bullying per se. I think there's a bigger story there, but it's really a fabulous example of how, this is a reality and this is how kids can deal with it and make it work out. So I appreciate it for that as well.
Thank you.
So if there are no other questions, there have been lots of comments about how great this is. I'm going to let you all know, as you probably know, you can buy a copy of this at Sausalito Books by the Bay. We're on the waterfront in downtown Sausalito. We're open 7 days a week. And because Jen is local, I love our local authors, she can personalize it for you. We've got signed copies in the store. And I'm actually going to put this in my newsletter that goes out next week, promoting it as what we're reading right now. So I know we have a very special performance for you here at the end, but I want to thank Alison for joining us, and thank you, Jen, and congratulations on your great new book. We're very excited about it, and I appreciate everyone joining us today as well. So I'm going to sign off and let Jen finish the rest of this.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It really has been a treat to talk to both of you. What I'm going to share is a video of my daughter talking about the trombone, because she was my inspiration for Amelia to choose the trombone. And so here it is. It's 4 minutes long, and I hope you'll stay on and enjoy this video with us.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah, one of Jennifer's daughters, and I started playing trombone in 5th grade, just like Amelia and Madge. And just, the trombone is the best instrument. That is definitely one thing you should take away from this book. And yeah, so I just wanted to kind of let you see what kind of a trombone looks like, and we can kind of just learn like Amelia learns. And I was the consultant in this book, just so you know. So all the trombone information is accurate. So yeah, this is what a trombone is, and trombones basically have 7 positions. It's something that people always get confused about when they're first starting, because there is nothing that delineates the positions, but you kind of learn shortcuts. So this, of course, is first. And then right here, where the slide, this part of the slide where you hold it, reaches your bell, that's third. So here you have first, and here you have third, and so second is between those in the middle. So that's kind of how you can kind of start learning things. Fourth position is where the top of your slide right here meets your bell. So third is right here, fourth is right here, and then 5th and 6th is a little bit more kind of just, you figure it out. So 5th is just a little bit farther, and then 6th is kind of with your arm all the way out. So those are kind of positions. When you're playing trombone, you have to have your lips pursed in a certain way. It's kind of your embouchure. And so your embouchure is basically, when you're playing trombone, it's kind of like so I was just going down half steps. So that was first position F, second position E, third position E flat, fourth position B. So these are all kind of notes that every first trombone player learns. Another thing that definitely comes up in the book is mutes. So here are kind of 2 styles of mutes that you have. They have kind of slightly different sounds, so I'm just going to demonstrate them for you. So these little cork pieces just slide up really nicely in your bell. You kind of turn a little bit, make sure it's in there. You don't want your mute to come out in the middle of the song, which has definitely happened. So you can see it's a little bit of a different sound. It's a little bit muted. You can also hear it with this one. Get a little bit of a different sound. This one captures a little bit more of the sound coming out of the bell. So basically, it's kind of what sound you want coming out of your bell. So that's kind of the basics. And then I'm just going to play a little section of the song that kind of comes up in the book, the rondo. And Amelia has to play this song in a pivotal moment. So I'm just going to play like a short section of it. It's a little bit long, so I'm not going to play the whole thing. But here we So just a short little section. I do apologize, I haven't played it in years, so please just pretend I am a fifth grader playing at the same level. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the book and support my mom. She's a great writer.
Thank you, everybody. I do hope, I do think music is an important part of students' lives, and it's great to have that be a part of Muffled. And I'm really appreciated that Sarah Shepard, who is now living on the East Coast, was able to join us for this. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks again. We look
Thank
forward
you.
to seeing you here. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Allison.
I thank you. It was so nice to be
Thank you,
with
Sarah.
you.
Thank you.